Okay, so we are,
It's in everybody's packet.
so,
Great.
actually, is there anyone here that would like to give public comment? So, I mean, theoretically, everybody here is also part of the public, so. Okay, all right, so we will move into instructional council, but can you do the instructional council update?
I cannot do that. I do not have the notes, and I was anticipating Mrs. Wilson was going to be,
Okay,
so I was not prepared to.
okay, all right. Okay, so then, there has been, for the other committee members, Carolyn Evans and I did get together to discuss agenda items, and specifically the agenda items that we discussed at the last meeting of issues that we would like to have brought before this committee for discussion. We did plan on a couple of those items to be discussed today, but it ended up becoming important that we have these schools because we have the principals here to discuss them, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. This isn't, so just wanna let people know that we're not ignoring the request for the topics that we discussed at the last meeting. It's just that we need to do this at this time. There were a variety of topics, English language learners, and remember we had a discussion and there was a pretty long list of things that we were gonna deal with. And we did work out a schedule of how we would approach those, but we'll have to discuss that schedule at the next meeting, because we need to get through these today, so. With that, I'm gonna turn this over to you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Reeve. I'm the principal at Coit Creative Arts Academy. And again, it's nice to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah. We have a focus designation, and so what we're looking at is improving our math and our writing assessment scores. So looking at our map, comparatively speaking, for CCR growth and then typical growth, what I did was analyze with the teachers our growth between fall and winter last year and fall and winter this year. So just comparatively speaking, not proficiency, but as far as growth is concerned, we were looking at, and I'm gonna keep the grade levels down further. We were looking at an increase of 18% fall to winter from last year in growth in math. So we went from 39% to 57% in our CCR growth. And our reading went from 51 to 65%. So that's an increase of 14% CCR growth. And then if we look at typical growth, there you can see they're highlighted.
That's the next one.
I'm trying to keep the grade levels off.
Yeah.
So this is typical growth. You can see the bars go way up. And if you look at the chart here, you can see that all students went from, again, higher numbers. We have 58 to 75% meeting their typical growth targets. Fall to winter, that's a 17% increase from last year, fall to winter. And reading from 60% to 74% meeting typical growth, fall to winter, a 14% increase. So we're continuing to increase, and I hope to see that same pattern this spring when we compare results fall to spring. So let's talk about, it's a little past St. Patrick's Day, but not too far. Didn't wear green today. Let's talk about our map. Not only are our map NWA reports for fall to winter growing, and here, this is exactly what I just had stated. So we're increasing on an average of about 15 and 17%. But one thing that we've been doing that's a little different is we have our math and writing awards. So if they're in the Hall of Fame, the Writing Hall of Fame, they receive a writing medallion. That's the one that's on the right. And that's if a panel, teaching panel, picks that student's writing. Then they're recognized at an assembly and given the award. If a student also meets the end of year goals for math fluency, they receive a math medallion. Then they continue to work on, they'll have a pin that they will wear. Postpone this, I don't want to restart the computer. So they will receive a pin to say that they went ahead and met the next year's goals. so they can continue to increase their rigor. Professional development, teachers have looked at the Descartes, which is the NWA website, breakdowns, range resources based upon the grade level deficiencies on the school goal strand report. So basically, they're taking students, they're breaking down their math and reading scores so that they can decide on what areas of math and reading the students need to work on to differentiate in the classroom. They also created activities and assignments that coincide with information listed under the designated RIT range. And they uploaded that information and post on a shared drive for teachers. So if I have a student in this RIT range, I can go to this shared drive and pick an activity that I can use in my classroom. And I hope to keep that growing so that next year we have even more activities that are aligned to their RIT range. So,
Is that new?
Descartes' always been there, but that's new for our building, yes. Okay. Data,
Sorry, what do you do to work with the parents so that they kind of know how their kid is
that's
progressing?
a great question. So, most of the teachers, I should say most, have created activities that align with their RIT range that they can bring home with them. One thing that we've been working on for this week is spring break packets. So not only IXL, which is a program up here, is a program that we've started at Coit that's leveled for math, but we also are creating prescriptions for the students in the fact that they can work on their breaks on RIT level activities. So working at the level that they're at using MAP data. So we've used the MAP data mostly in our building to make sure that we meet the state standards for MEP. So in the end, that's the Common Core standards across the board. Daily math journals, MobiMax, which is was originally designated for special ed, but we found that not only regular ed, but high proficient kids can benefit from MobiMax. It's a leveled program, a lot like IXL, but it's also a prescription program. Grandparent tutoring program, we have a lot of grandparents coming in to tutor the students, GRCC students, the Descartes alignment, spring break packets, challenge groups, making sure that we have groups that challenge the students within the classroom, and more math centers according to goal strands. Map skills websites also. We found a lot of neat websites that are free that align to the map test. So parents can log on at home. Okay, and so next we have, are there any questions for me at all?
Yeah, I have a couple questions in relationship to, how does this, because the, your school, the Coit is a focus school,
Right,
which means that it's addressing the gap, right?
right.
And so how does this work? So this shows an increase in the growth overall, but how does that end up impacting the gap?
Well, my philosophy is that every student should increase no matter
Right.
what level they're at. So what we might end up doing is doing this,
Right,
okay? But that's okay as long as we hit the proficiency
Okay.
levels that we need to hit. And then to close that gap in making sure that students that are Title I students are receiving the one-on-one tutoring through the grandparents program and also through Kids Hope.
okay, so that's so basically an overall attempt to increase.
Overall,
And then that will end up leading to the lower levels catching up.
that's the hope.
Okay, perfect. And then how does this fit with the state's expectations for closing that gap? Because they won't be measured in the map, correct?
Right, you know, we're finished with the MEP right now.
Right.
We have the Smarter Balance Assessment coming up next spring. So, MAP is our measure until then, including analyzing the MEP results. So we have a PD this Friday to look at MEP and look at goal strand areas that match up with our MAP areas that we're deficient in.
Will the state, in their analysis of your work, take into account the map scores growth? No.
No,
Okay,
It's
so
separate.
it's still just based on how the school did
Right.
back in October?
right,
Again, okay, so.
you're up
right.
to you for that.
So this is good, it shows work towards it, but it doesn't necessarily show whether or not,
No, and.
Anything happened in October?
Supposedly they're aligned to Common Core standards, so.
yeah, all right, so, okay, all right.
How many Kids Hope mentors do you have?
You know, they're increasing every day. Last I counted, we had about 22, I believe it was 23. We have a lot of people that are in the community that are coming in just for an hour or two each week. And each hour helps, you know, and it creates that bond with the student and brings them up. Law firms.
You actually have neighbors?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We're lucky, we're downtown and have those resources. Any other questions? Okay, I think I've spent my 3.5 minutes.
Okay.
Very good.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. I am here representing Dickinson Academy.
I was gonna say, did you get a new job?
No,
Just,
no, because of my work with the middle schools in the K-8 division, and Dickinson was identified in August, and Mrs. Johnson is currently on a leave, and I have the pleasure of working with Mr. Evans, who is the interim principal
Mr.
here,
Evans.
so thank you for being here.
They dragged them out again.
We have
See,
been
I've
collaborating.
learned one thing, is that you do not want to retire at Grand Rapids Middle School.
I know.
Because you end up working a lot more.
Yeah, he was at Burton.
He's just like,
He came back.
And then you run for the board.
There you go, there's a
You really can't.
So I have had the pleasure of collaborating with Mr. Evans and his staff.
And likewise.
Thank you very much. And so Dickinson is one of our newly identified schools back in August, of course, and so we're calling it a cohort 2013 school. And I will to, some of this is similar to the conversation we probably had 2 months ago. What I do have to tell you is that Dickinson's plan that was submitted in January 30th, was approved with the contingencies that we've talked about before, of having a signed letter of agreement, and that is something that is currently in the works to create some flexibility at all of the newly identified priority schools around the area of professional development. So that's a conversation that's currently underway. On March 3rd, the plan was rolled out to the entire staff at Dickinson. And Mr. Evans and the ILT shared the plan, the approved plan, and gave the staff some opportunity for feedback. And then we know that the monitor, the MDE monitor that will be assigned to Dickinson will be visiting within the next month. So sometime between today and the end of April, there will be a monitoring visit. Some tools have been sent out to schools already, Dickinson included, and they're really new MDE tools that are designed to help us think through how we will actually move to a full implementation around the big ideas that are in the plan.
Cindy, when you say reform and redesign plan was shared with the staff, assuming the staff had a lot of input into it.
They did have a lot of
So
input.
this is following approval.
The staff had a lot of input, but it was really the leadership team of the building, meaning the ILT, the instructional leadership team, that did the writing, the revising, the coming to work sessions, and thinking through some of the finer detail work. And so they really, it was a lot of hours. And really, they took the work back and would talk to staff, but it really takes a lot of hours to think through analyzing your data, determining what your priorities are, and then really developing those next steps and making them pass through the rubric that MDE has created to evaluate all of the plans. So,
They've all been brought along the whole process.
yep, they've all been through the full process. So, the big ideas that Dickinson has put their eggs in these baskets is around consistent PBIS, flexible grouping, starting with reading. Right now, they're starting with reading and then moving that work into math. And then remember, this is really a 4-year plan. This is the beginning year. But then by the end of the 4 years, your plan needs to address all content areas. So while they're starting with reading, then moving to math, then they're going to move to science and social studies. So that is in the big picture, that's how the plan is designed, is to be implemented for all content areas.
So when you say consistent positive behavioral interventions, so the teachers have come up with a classroom management, perspective, or not perspective, but, that aligns with the PBIS, or how does that work itself out?
So, the building had at the beginning of the year, really almost 100% change in staff. In the beginning of the year was a new administrator, because they've gone from being a K-5 building now to being a K-8 building. The majority of the staff were new this year. So, from the staff's perspective coming in, they need to just really start from ground zero with PBIS.
Okay.
And be very diligent and consistent in their implementation for really creating the culture that they wanted to have at that building.
Do you know what their acronym is by any chance? I mean,
They're,
is it the STAR, is it, I don't,
Acronym for,
Their acronym, so what is their motto around PBIS? Polar bears?
well, it has to be the Bengal Tigers,
okay.
right? Because we're moving to alignment across all the,
I think you were talking about the PBIS acronym.
Okay.
Like
Right.
in some schools, we have SOAR.
Okay.
and
Or STAR, or ROAR.
Right.
I was just curious.
no, I appreciate that. No, and I honestly, I am not sure what that is.
Okay.
We can find out for you and let you know.
Do you know the differences between STAR and SOAR and ROAR?
Every school.
Every school.
Every school comes up
has
with
a-
their own
Okay.
acronym to teach the kids these character
Oh, I
values
see,
that
I
they
see.
try to catch them doing right.
But the values are all the same, school to school.
Pretty much. I mean, they're all the
Other
same.
than
They're
it's
just
all-
stated differently, but
Sure, PBIS,
So if it's,
consistent across,
so if it's roar, it starts with, yeah, respect maybe.
just have a different name.
No, that was a good question. SIOP, we know, is also one of their big ideas. So, this is really the outline for the timeline for the implementation for the 2013 school year. It includes a lot of the work that the school has already done. And currently, the school is working to develop the data analysis piece to create the flexible grouping. This week, there is a district-wide PD for middle schools and K-8s, and we're using that as an opportunity for all staff to really dig down into their math and their MEP data and understand where students are at. And then next week, the plan is that the ILT will work on developing that clear process for flexible grouping around reading in the building. So, the work continues. It's bringing all the teachers in and creating the process and procedures and having everybody have input.
Are most of the staff experienced teachers, or?
It's a combination. It really is a combination. It is. It's really, it is. So.
Could be a good start.
So, one of the requirements for all priority schools this year is that they start the work around implementation planning or implementation guides. And so as we move towards the end of the school year, the KISD will help, and myself, working with Ms. Robbins, the ILT, and really the whole staff, have some plans around creating implementation guides. How are we going to consistently implement all of the big ideas and move this work into the new school year so that in 14-15, the school starts the school year with 100% implementation. Those documents that I referred to, the unpacking tools from MDE are also part of MDE's requirement that we create implementation guides and a plan for implementation. The monitor has not been in yet at this school, but we did receive word for a visit for another school just this week. So we anticipate that they will be in very soon. But the monitoring that is going on in the building is being done in PLCs. It's those quarterly data dialogues that we've talked about before. where we look at student work, some of the other assessments we have in the building. We have quarterly learning walks. Dickinson has currently had 2. They have another one coming in the next 2 weeks. And then classroom walkthroughs, which we're working on establishing a weekly walkthrough process in the building.
Cindy, can you tell me a little bit about the quarterly learning walks?
So in conjunction with a data dialogue, so we'll have a data dialogue where we look at the data, and that the part of the end of that meeting is setting a plan for the learning walk process, and learning, having a date, we have a date already set and they're aligned, the data dialogue to the learning walk. So we will set, what are we going to look for when we go into classrooms? So we might be looking for quality questioning in another building. And then a core group of people, usually it's a combination of teachers, administration, someone from the district, and in this case, at our priority school, someone from the ISD, will follow a protocol, visit classrooms, take down evidence, take the evidence back, have a conversation, we have a protocol for the conversation, and then determine some next steps. What are the implications for professional development then? And it's an aggregate conversation about all of the data that we saw during that learning walk.
Thank you.
And then does it help the teacher? I mean, is there a dialogue? So if you come into my classroom and all these folks come in at various times and I'm freaked out, is there an opportunity, to say, hey, this is John, this is what you're doing right? And
This is not about the individual teacher.
okay,
It's about the building work.
okay,
So if you were a classroom teacher, there would probably be about 3 of us that would come in at the same time. And we'd be about in your room for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. We have some very specific things that we're looking for. It is not evaluative. We're not evaluating you. We're looking for evidence of our big ideas being implemented in the building. That's what we're looking for.
Aside from that, I go to classrooms and do observations and look at lesson plans and monitor instruction. And I speak with the teachers regarding how they're doing and explain to me the rationale for doing the academic process. So there is an ongoing dialogue, both as a group and also individually by way of instructional process, by way of monitoring. So I'm going in all the time just assessing and looking at exactly what's going on in that classroom by way of the academic process.
I do believe that this means that Mrs. Mathis is up.
Well, I have a couple of questions. Just in a way, though, it sounds like even though this is a part of your school based on what's happened in the past, it's a new school. I mean, you have nearly all new staff. You have a whole lot of students that weren't there last year, and so I guess that's understood by the state when they're looking at it. But it's really building a new school. In some ways, it's kind of with this kind of support and oversight from the state along the way. You got these partners, and I guess I hope people see it that way. But in a way, you got partners in building a new school, making it work for the community. So, okay, so thanks.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Hi. I am Tricia Mathis, the principal at MLK. Good to see you again, and nice to meet you, I think. Well, thank you. So in light of the priority plan this year, excuse me, after the plan was approved for MLK, and I think we were approved in January, December. So it was approved, and then it was waiting for a few documents from the Grand Rapids Public Schools from Franklin campus, and they sent those in, so now the plan has been completely approved. Through that, we have shared the priority plan with staff through ILT time, through PLC time. Additionally, we have a shared staff drive that the priority plan is on as well. So staff will be very knowledgeable about it, because like Cindy's talked about, the fact that next year when you start school, it will be up and running, completely fully implemented. So making sure staff that are in the building are well aware of it, know what's expected of them, and are willing to do that work with us. So making sure that they really know what's gonna be expected of them, fully implementing it next year. We have been receiving, I'm sorry, if I change that out, will it? Thanks.
And if we're still here, we're just
I
gonna
don't know if it changed.
leave. No.
Sorry.
We won't postpone it again.
We have been doing professional development in professional learning communities, and additionally throughout the school day, in deepening academic rigor through the application of ROSI, and ROSI has to do with basically the data cycle. And I think I talked a little bit about the fact that MLK is partnering with, through a Kellogg Foundation grant, we partner with schools and Partners in School Innovation. And so really focusing on using the data to drive your instruction and understanding what the data means at a much deeper level. Not just, oh, this kid is here, but what does that mean, and how does that apply to their instruction, basically? They're being held accountable for applying the learning to practice. So if we hold a professional development or something goes within PLC, then there are learning walks that go with those, or there are also, I'm sorry, not learning walks, there are walkthroughs that go with. So when you're talking about monitoring, you're talking more about actual walkthroughs where it is a 3 to 5 minute, I'm looking very specifically for certain things, and then I'm out, and I'm keeping tallies as a building. I do feedback to teachers individually, but then I also feedback to the building as a whole. Right now, we're at 76 percentile of, getting 100% of the points that you need for this building-wide. Also, just deepening their knowledge of the use of map data for their core instruction and flexible grouping. You heard Barb Reep talk earlier about Descartes. So you can use Descartes for the flexible grouping, which is wonderful, but it should also be helping with your core instruction. So we just had a professional development around how to use that information during the actual lessons of all of your students. So if you know overall your classroom is missing something, you look at the Descartes, you look at the Grand Rapids Public School pacing guide. If it's not being covered in the pacing guide, then how are you going to get it in there to make sure they are getting it before the next time? Additionally, the differentiation in using data to drive instruction. And we are working specifically right now on SMART goals for our students, daily learning targets within the classroom, and also equity practices. And those are things that I am doing a weekly walkthrough on and monitoring. Speaking to the piece that they talked about, how the state will want to see how you're monitoring the big ideas.
So like with SMART goals, is that, smaller target students or small groups, or how does
Right
that
now,
look
the
like?
SMART goal is to they have what's called like a focal group. They have some small groups that are differentiated. So for your 3 to 5 students that are working on a very specific goal, then they have a goal that maybe the goal is 2 weeks long, or maybe the goal is longer and closer to 4 weeks long, but it's specific, measurable, and they're constantly going back to see whether or not they've had it and whether or not they got it, and then they'll move on to the next goal. Learning targets are more to the overall classroom. So if you walked into a classroom and you looked on a classroom teacher's board and it said their schedule, but under reading, it would give an I can statement, and the I can statement would be very specific to the student. So when the student looks up there for the day, they know by the end of reading, I can, use fact and opinion to understand informational text better, or something along those lines. So it would be an I can statement for learning targets.
Okay.
Right now, we began our walkthroughs on March 3rd, talking specifically about total participation, which also goes under one of the big buckets, which talked about equity. We're also working with national equity on that, and then also the daily learning targets and the use of Descartes for academic rigor. They are being monitored right now through professional learning committee meetings, data collected on data dialogues, walkthroughs, learning groups. We talked about the learning partnership with a small group of 4 to 5 students that are fostered by focusing on their goals that are needed specific to them, setting instructional learning goals, SMART targets for that particular group, measuring and reflecting on that student progress, applying teacher and student learning and student success to the whole group, and then really what it was an opportunity for the teachers to learn how to use that ROSI cycle, because if you're looking for a change, you can't throw everything at somebody at one time. So I'm gonna give you a small degree of change. You're gonna learn this process really well with the 5 kids, and now we're branching it out. I have classrooms that actually have these going on now, learning partnerships with closer to 3 groups of their students, so close to 15, out of 25 kids that they have these learning partnerships. Learning partnerships also comes from the national equity, which has to do with the equity within the classroom and equity within, the district for students. So that is something that we are working on as well.
So,
Go
I'm sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
So the learning partnerships are something that's, help me figure out, the National Equity Project is, this is their
It's kind of,
tool
no.
or no?
It is to an extent. It was a tool that we used for, in order to get the big picture, we started small. So they started with a group of 5 students, some classrooms did, and they had 5 kids, and they took the data from those 5 students, and they learned how to read that data and read it better than just, okay, they're at a RIT range of 181 to 191. What does that RIT range mean? Because I can throw that at somebody, but if you have no idea what it means. So it started with them learning Descartes, learning really
The
what that.
teachers.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because it's about shifting teacher practice.
Okay,
And so them learning what that RIT range meant, and then also how to apply that to a small group differentiated, and learning partnerships. When I talk about national equity, students putting, and it kind of also comes back from University of Pittsburgh as well, when they talk about students putting forth effort,
Right.
efficacy. And so letting them see themselves as learners, and that is something we've worked really hard on, because a lot of students come to school and they don't see themselves as learners or don't think of themselves as being able to do that. And so giving them the sense of pride and feeling like I can accomplish this will help drive them. And so the learning partnership has to do with changing teacher practice in how to help the student become a partner in their learning, how to help them learn to put forth efficacy, but then in also allowing them to understand that their teacher is there for them.
okay.
And it does come somewhat through national equity, just because Heidi Gill, who's worked with MLK, had some experience in starting that off small like that. But it also went to ROSI, which has to do with the data cycle, because they would learn how to use data in a smaller group and then be able to branch it out to a whole class for reading. And just like the plan, you start with reading for the state plan, but then each year you're gonna add in more math, science, and social studies. So it was starting with that small degree of change and bringing it out larger circle to the whole classroom.
Does anybody have a class on acronyms?
No, right?
It sounds like the key part of this is this learning partnership idea,
Right now,
and
well,
where
for that particular
it came
piece,
from is,
Somewhat,
yeah. okay.
somewhat. The idea of them being partners within their learning, yes,
Okay,
because
right.
that does have to go with the efficacy piece.
Right, okay.
But it's also about shifting teacher practice, even more so in my opinion, than even the partnership.
And the shifting teacher practice is coming from,
From them having to really spend the time of looking at that data and really getting to know that student, as a student and as a person.
That makes a lot of sense.
We're on track right now, because I've actually had a couple different people who have come in between, Cindy and Laura Otten from KISD, and then also Jan Barr. So I know that we're on track right now because we have started implementing some of them already. I already have some of those tools for the state to monitor up and running. Additionally, we have a meeting with the state. They'll be coming in on the 28th of March to meet with myself and a few other people from the district. So I know that we're on the right track because we have the plan up and running. The plan was approved quickly, so. Again, we're just gonna continue to implement the reform redesign plan in collaboration with Partners in School Innovation, National Equity, the Michigan Department of Education. KISD supports me really well, as Cindy and Jan do as well, so. Learning walks, data dialogues, PLCs, observations and feedback by myself, coaches, classroom visits.
How do you help parents support their kids, as you're implementing these? So how do I understand it as a parent? Because I'm not gonna get all this as a parent. I'm
Yeah.
like, what is?
We
all that?
actually have
But I understand that I have to help my son
We actually have part
with
of
it.
the plan, one of the parts of the plan in the state of Michigan, when they went over our plan, actually commented on how well thought out the parent piece of the plan was. Honestly, the parent piece has just started being implemented just recently at this last conferences. So going over the MAP scores with every single parent when they came in for conference, going over what their students are doing within the classroom and what a MAP score means, because if you say MAP, they have no idea. So NWEA, talking about the different tests, what it really means to their student. Additionally, we have a PTCC council, we have a PAL leader, so we're constantly trying to hold monthly parent meetings, meetings to get parents in the building more often. Kindergarten, as an example, holds a monthly meeting for their kindergarten parents, and one of the teachers will take the kids while the other teacher takes the parents for both of the classrooms and tries to work with them as to what a kindergarten student needs to know before they leave kindergarten. So really trying to engage them. Next year, there's even more targeted engagement with our parents. So, okay. Any other questions?
So in the end, this is more of a logistical question for all the schools, and it goes back to my earlier question, but in the end, the monitoring is occurring to see if you're following through with your plan and everything. But in the end, the measurement is ultimately the test scores
It is.
eventually.
Absolutely.
A test score, the tests that we haven't determined yet, but next, whatever the test would be a year from now, there'll be a test, and then that will measure.
That's how the state will measure. That's how the state will.
The state will measure
But we will measure before.
as we go, right.
In
But in terms of the state's perspective, even if you show growth in these other areas, what they're interested in is this final test measure,
The state's metrics, that's what's used.
the state's
Top to
metrics.
Bottom list.
Okay,
That's what matters to them, yes.
okay, all right. But I do, I mean, I'm not, I'm just asking the question just for knowledge's sake, but, I do appreciate that what, in the end, matters is the children learning along the way. And
Yeah.
so, and this is moving that, and I like the MAP score as a way of, for my own kid, trying to see where he's at and where he needs to go. It's a very useful tool for those that understand the tool, so I like
And
this, yeah.
ultimately, for the top to bottom, you're right, it is the meat, but when they come in and monitor, the way I understand it is if you are not on track, they're gonna make sure you know
Yeah.
you're not on track, that you're not monitoring well enough, that you're not pulling out, or maybe something isn't working, some
Right,
things will be shifted.
right, so,
Okay,
right, okay.
thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rashawn McClanahan, and I am the assistant principal at Elgin Middle School. Of course, there's been some transitions taking place in our building, and so I'm representing Alger on behalf of our school. And so, say again?
What was your first name again?
Rashawn.
Sean.
Yes. So you've heard several different things that are going to be repeated in this conversation. Some of the things that are taking place at Martin Luther King are some things I'm going to reference to in this PowerPoint. So feel free to ask some additional questions as to how we're using those things in our building. So our areas of focus that we're focused on are quality questioning, accountable talk, flexible grouping, student engagement through leadership, technology applied learning. And then our adult learning, we're focused on ROCE, which is results oriented cycle of inquiry, PSI, and National Equity Project, which I can speak to as we move through the PowerPoint. And we're also focusing on adult and student leadership, which is sort of a key component of what we need to do in our building as far as moving our work forward. So to break those areas of focus down, students will ask high-quality questions, think critically, gain an increased understanding of content, improve in decision-making, and respond to questions appropriately through the use of quality questioning. Students will be accountable for their learning and the learning of their peers through the use of accountable talk. Experience increased learning, motivation, and positive interactions while participating in small and diverse student-centered learning communities through the use of flexible grouping and use of leadership to model learning expectations and create a positive academic culture. So our professional development is provided to teachers through our content level professional learning communities. Particularly what we're looking at in those learning communities is how to support teachers with strategies that not only impact their instructional delivery, but gets to their improvements in classroom management and environment. We have ELA and math professional development that takes place. PSI is working with us to meet with teachers on developing different strategies for teachers to implement in their classroom. For example, in math, we're taking a look at Khan Academy as a resource for teachers to use not only in the classroom, but as part of our after-school programming that we're setting up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Khan Academy gives teachers an opportunity to use online technology for tutoring support and math practice, and the teacher is able to use information from that tool to kind of gauge where students are in how they're developing in their math practice. And so they're also working with us. PSI is working with ELA teams as far as looking at Descartes, looking at reading data in order to help support teachers with different strategies that they can use in the classroom. So one of the key elements we're looking at is the flexible grouping. How do we look at data to help teachers formulate groups that will best serve our students in their classrooms? We have an instructional leadership team, ILT, that takes a look at data and use that data to inform teachers on ways to improve their instruction. We started doing something that's pretty new to our school this year, which is teacher effectiveness workshops, which is sort of a voluntary opportunity for teachers to participate in learning more strategies, differentiated strategies that can support the classroom. For example, one of the things we talked about is unstructured and structured time. What do students do in that space, and how do you develop activities that are specific to those individuals? For example, you have a kid who gets done with their work, and so what is the transition for that kid into the next activity, and how is that activity aligned to still the content that the kid needs to learn within the classroom? And so not just busy work, but an actual activity that drives their level of achievement forward. And so we spoke with teachers about that. We also talked about student leadership, which we believe is critical to helping teachers sort of carry the work at a level that will take us further. Teachers have the challenge of trying to manage classrooms and trying to provide instructions by themselves, but through the use of student leadership and training students how to be owners of their own work and utilizing their model of expectation to influence other kids supports classroom and learning in the classroom. And so we're providing actual PD for teachers on specific aspects of leadership, as well as training them how to be better leaders as well. And so we mentioned PSI and National Equity Project, which is a program that is sort of critical to where we are at Alger. When you talk about culture building and you talk about cultural competency and you talk about relationship building and things that centered around those issues, National Equity Project it has been critical in pulling our teachers and our administration together to sort of dive into those central issues that may cause us not to move in the direction that we should. And so we're able to have some open dialogue about what issues we have around those topics and what we're going to do as far as PD to help resolve whatever issues we may have. And so having that outside service has been a huge benefit to our building.
How has that occurred? Is it in after-school meetings,
Well,
spaces?
recently we all met sort of district-wide. Some schools were invited to a professional development opportunity with National Equity, and so administrators have invited, we were asked to invite staff members to join us in this workshop session. It went from 8 to 3, so sort of a full-day opportunity, and And also, National Equity participates in coming into our building to provide support for our building on site. And so it's sort of an interactive piece that takes place between National Equity Project and our building.
So that occurred, so when there was a district-wide professional development
Yes.
opportunity, and then in your building, then what does that actually end up meaning in terms of National Equity Project's interaction with your staff?
Well, one of the things is we take the information back that we learned from the professional development and share with our teachers and talk about ways in which we're going to implement some of the strategies that were laid before us. For example, we talked a lot about leadership and how to lead meetings and how to understand who's a part of that meeting and to use that information so that everyone can be involved and everyone can feel a part of what's going on and included. And so it's sort of a shared decision making that takes place. And so how do you get to that? How as me as an administrator lead that meeting in such a way that everyone becomes involved and feel that they're participating. And so that's one of the things that we are dealing with within our building. I think with working with NAP will give us a better opportunity to make better decisions moving forward.
Can I just clarify? The district-wide in-service was for 6 schools, not for all schools.
Okay.
Just the 6 schools that are.
Okay. Yeah, he did say that, actually,
Sorry.
that there were some schools invited. No, I heard you say that, but then I misinterpreted, so sorry.
Okay, so our monitoring progress is process is similar to what has already been mentioned, and we have walkthroughs, and we actually use a walkthrough form that includes the areas of focus that were mentioned in the previous slide. We have learning walks and data dialogues. Instructional leadership team gets together and talk about data. PSI informs us of various things in terms of the information that they put together through their own observations and their own analysis of the data that is within our building. And of course, we have our formal observations. Some of the adjustments, ROSI has been a part of our new way of thinking, and so that has been an adjustment for teachers to have to participate in that process. We have a professional development taking place on the 21st, which is Friday, to better train teachers overall around the process of ROSI, but along with digging deeper in data and better understanding it to inform our instruction and our learning in our building. So here's our data. And it's not as good as we want it to be. We'll be honest and say that. And so if you take a look at it, we have a ways to go as far as improvement. You can look at MAP for the winter in math, and you would see some improvements there. But it's a long ways to go. And so with having these opportunities to provide development for teachers and better understanding data, and then taking that data to provide them with the necessary strategies that they can use in the classroom to support this, it's going to help us out. We have different opportunities to address some of these concerns, particularly in math. When we talk about, I think I mentioned Khan Academy that we're using, the after-school tutoring that we are instituting. We have some support coming from Valley State University, where we have maybe 10 to 20 students who are going to be helping out with volunteering on after school, where we have Saturday school that will provide additional support for students in those particular areas. We do have SSR, which is an additional time allocated for students to participate in reading activity. We're looking at student voice as an opportunity to get students more motivated in school. Student voice deals with providing students with the opportunity to lead and to make decisions around academics and culture, but also help to create better enrichment opportunities that motivates kids to strive to be better.
take me through the MEP scores a minute here. Just want to make sure I understand when you're looking at MEP math, 0% proficient, is that then target is 18.12, is that how I read
Yes.
that?
This would be the test taken in fall of 2012.
But it's
2013.
13, sorry.
This is this last year's,
Right.
this is this
So-
year's, okay, this is 2013.
So reading 29% were proficient, but the target is 38.41. I just want to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
Yep,
Correct.
correct.
So you have a ways to go,
Yes. Certainly.
a lot of work in front of you.
Yeah.
How has the change in leadership issues impacting the state's monitoring of this activity?
Answer that. I don't-
Ron or Cindy?
It has not.
It is not
Has
impacted.
the change in leadership in terms of most recent?
Well, I mean, yeah, throughout the year. Well, I know the change of leadership just happened recently, but in terms of the,
So, one of the things to keep in mind is that Alger is a school improvement grant school, and they are actually in the 2010 cohort.
okay,
So, they are different than the priority schools, the other
Right.
priority schools, because SIG schools are priority schools. So they're monitoring this year. They have not had a monitoring visit, and we no longer have a weekly monitor that visits the schools as we did for the last 3 years. All the school improvement grant schools are in what we call year 4 sustainability. And Alger was re-identified in 2012. And at this point, we don't know what the exit criteria is. MDE is currently working on that piece, but we have not been given that exit criteria, so we can't talk to that.
But you can look at these scores and know
That we
how
definitely.
far we have to go here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't need MDE to tell us that.
Nope, we don't. So we do have a lot of work to do, absolutely. And there's some things have changed, and so, but the work continues. And so no matter what the decision is, our work doesn't change. We still have some very intense work to do.
Quadruple.
Did that answer your question?
yeah, but it raised a bunch more, but
Yeah,
I'll
it
just,
Did that-
so, but anyway, so,
Not to be said, there's a lot to do.
You can let us know what questions you might have, and we can answer that for you
Absolutely.
when you would like.
okay. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Hey, how's it going?
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good, how
That's
are you?
good.
This evening, what you saying? Let's see here.
And that lasts.
That's turned
almost
into
an hour.
evening.
Get the glasses out.
Get the glasses out. Get mine out.
All right, so I am Rodney Lewis. I prepared a presentation for this evening. I'm gonna take it from a different perspective. We kind of shared the story in our first presentation, and then I know there was a second follow-up led by Mrs. Peck, I believe. Today, we're just gonna talk about, I'm gonna clue you guys into just the big ideas and then talk about some of the things that we've done leading up to this point to get prepared for the Michigan Merit Exam that we just embarked upon the first week in March, and then currently working on this week in makeup opportunities. But the first big bullet points that we had was increased lesson planning time for teachers and the usage of our lesson planning template that we designed here at Ottawa Hills High School. The second big priority was to use the Teachscape 360-degree cameras to focus in from a laser-like perspective on instructional strategies and instructional delivery in the classroom, and then looking at the school-wide literacy as well when we look at reading and writing. Some of the data that we use, and some of this is going to be, some slides are going to be slides that were given previously. Some will be some that Mrs. Slade looked at the External Governance Board. So some of it will be familiar to you. But we did look at fall and winter gains EPAS results that we took early in October and then again in December, moving into the second semester of the school year. And then we did look at work keys material that as a day 2 component of our Michigan Merit Exam process. This is a slide here that, the priorities here, this is a slide that I had at the first Academic Achievement Committee meeting that we had, just kind of detailing the trends that we had over the course of the last 5 years and some of the gaps that we had as it relates to the college readiness benchmarks. This here is, slide here deals with the EPAS data that we've had from fall of 2012 into this past winter that we've had. If you look at the fall to winter results, you can see that there was definitely gains from fall to winter, from fall 2013, 2014. Even if you look back to winter 2013 to winter 2014, you can get a perspective of we're actually outperforming where we were the previous year. So that is very optimistic as we prepare kids to take the Michigan Merit Exam in early March. So based on those results, the composite growth was 1.2 overall. Our English growth from fall to winter was 1.4 points growth. Our math growth was 0.5. Reading growth was 0.8 points, and then our science growth or gains were was 2.1 points. Anything that increases from a point perspective of 5 points growth is considered significant growth within the ACT standards. Science really soared. And it did the same thing last year too when we looked at the data.
Isn't that interesting?
So that's pretty phenomenal. And that science really deals with a lot of looking at and interpreting graphs and charts versus science itself. When we look at some of the data as it relates to some of the context, put in context, the External Governance Board was trying to look at the comparison or correlation between GPAs and our EPAS data. And this kind of speaks to that. There is really no direct correlation. However, when you look at if you move the charts, you look at a greater than 3.3 grade point average, those numbers are higher than the others. As you go down, it gets smaller. However, when you look at the growth from 860 to 1165 are two different tests. So when you look at those different growths, the 860 was from the fall results, and the 1165 was from the winter results. And if you look at the growth from the 2.9 range to 4.0, that growth was pretty significant versus the growth from less than 2.0 to 2.99 grade point average. This here is a look at the attendance versus our ACT scores. This is also something that the External Governance Board wanted to take a look at. Was there any correlations there? And there was no correlation between attendance and GPA scores. But it did show when you look at, again, it shows the gains that we made from assessment to assessment. And again, when you look at kids that had a 90% or higher attendance rate, they had higher gains than most, or from the lower than 69 and the 80 to 89%. The 70-79% attendance range there has some pretty substantial growth as well. This here is the non-full academic year kids. So these are the kids that did not make it through 3 consecutive count days. So they're not going to be accountable in our assessment scores from the Michigan Merit Exam other than the participation rate. But this kind of shows you where we were from the fall scale scores to our winter scale scores as it relates to just those kids. It's approximately 25 students that are non-full academic year students. And that gain was very minimal as we look at the numbers there. When we look at full academic year students, we got about 50 students that participated, or full academic year students. These are kids that were in our spring 2013 count, our fall 2013 count, our count that we just had in the 2014. If we look at the composite growth for these individuals, the composite growth from fall was 13.6. It moved to winter to 14.9. So they had some pretty significant growth as it relates or as comparative to the students that are non-full academic year students. And they had gains all the way up the chart as it relates to English, math, reading, and science. Some of the monitoring that we do, and this is a slide that we showed in the very first meeting that we had together, and some of the other folks talked a little bit about it, but we got instructional rounds, learning walks, monitoring a weekly grade book, monitoring lesson plans, classroom observations, teacher evals, PLC minutes, which are professional learning communities, analyzing student work within our instructional leadership team work, gains interim assessments that we just talked about, the EPAS data, and then our spring MME and MAP data. Some of the updates and next steps, our Prairie School Plan was approved with conditions in the month of February. They're waiting for a letter of agreement with signatures. When we looked at the testing process that took place on March 4th, 5th, and 6th for the Michigan Merit Exam, our day one participation was at a 94.7, rounded up to a 95%. Day two was at a 94.7, round that up as well to 95, and then day three was at 92.1. As of today, we tested 5 additional kids for makeups, and so our day one participation is now at 100%. So that's the first step to making those gains and getting up the scale from the top to bottom list.
You already hit the first step about a month ago, though, Mr. Lewis, the graduation rate.
Absolutely.
So that's really the first thing.
So graduation rate, the increase of 13%, and the graduation rate has allowed us to even be in the game, right? So you have to be able to be a player in the game, and that really is the first step to making this happen. And then the next step is when the actual test takes place, the participation rate must be at 95%. But the graduation rate is 20% of the actual top to bottom Z-score calculations.
So, I'm sorry, back to the participation rate, so that's 70, these are 76, so it's only 76 juniors?
There were 76 juniors that were full academic year kids. We
I see.
tested actually about 100 students, and then we had additional students that we assessed that were currently assessed, and they're used a different testing process. Then the Michigan Merit Exam, they do My Access, which are the tests that are given to students with IEPs, and then have
Okay.
some
all right,
other
so-
challenges.
Okay, I understand, thanks.
So that is taking place right now. We've got about 25 of those students taking that assessment. Since we've last met, we've had governance board meetings, or external governance board meetings. We've had school-based data dialogue. We have had learning walks, and then right after we received our data from Gaines in January, we went and created a 6-week intensive ACT workshop boot camp to prepare students for the Michigan Merit Exam in the areas of English, reading, math, science, and locating information what is connected back to our worksheets assessment, which is day 2 of the Michigan Merit Exam. That was the first 5 weeks was a 3-hour stint, 3 hours and 15-minute stint, and then the last session was a full day where they were being assessed, and then we took another practice ACT to get them prepared for the process. So. Thanks very much. I'm going to conferences now.
Okay, oh, have fun.
Long day.
Have fun.
Thanks, you too.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Carl Nelson, Principal, Union High School. Probably going to take a little different slant at this. What I do want to let you know from our first visit here in our presentation, in regards to our turnaround plan and our school improvement plan, we continue to work on school climate, which is our Capturing Kids' Hearts. We continue to work on our instructional model, which is the SIOP model for our ELL students, for all of our students, and our close and critical reading and also our numeracy, which is all about the understanding numbers and fundamentals of mathematics and algebra. So we continue to work on those things on a daily basis. That is a part of what we do on every day with our staff, with our students, and we just work the plan. And that is the plan, and that's one way that we're going to improve our school. I wholeheartedly believe in that. So we continue to work on that as our plan, our school improvement, our professional development. All of our professional development with our teachers have been in those categories. We don't want to veer from those types of things because we believe that that's our way of moving the needle with our school. Okay, so the different slant that I want to take is we also have a very important test that we just finished with our students 2 weeks ago, and that is our Michigan Merit Exam. The slides, and there's a lot of them, I didn't realize that I sent over probably 25 of them to you. The slides that are before you is information. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
We don't have to go through all of them.
I won't talk about all of them. I promise you, I won't talk about all of them.
I'm sure
but
they're each one important.
every
So
one
you're
of them.
10%, Dr.
Every one of them.
Go
So
through
we're gonna
them.
fly through this. But I do want you to know that this is the information that all of our staff members get, that all of our students get, specifically with those who are taking the Michigan Merit Exam. We had 181 students take the Michigan Merit Exam last 2 weeks ago, and we had 96 and 97% of those students take the test. I have a fantastic group of junior teachers who work tirelessly to make sure our students get the best, and they understand that. So the urgency was there, the information was there, and so this is the information. This is everything that has to do with the Michigan Merit Exam. We show them the benchmarks that they needed to have from the Explorer, the Plan, the ACT. Throughout this time, I do need to add that we also administered the Plan test and the Work Keys test to all of our students that particular week. So we will have data from our 9th graders and our 10th graders on the Plan and the Work Keys, so we can move forward with those students. We talked to them about the National Career Readiness Certificate and the importance of if they choose not to go to college, then we definitely want them to work as hard as they can with the Work Keys, because that will let employers know the skills that they have and the knowledge that they have in order to potentially be employed in that organization. Again, these are all the contributing elements to the Michigan Merit Exam and how it's scored, and that will be for the next couple of slides. Again, all information for you. It becomes a little complex and sometimes complicated, but there is a rhyme to the reason. The bottom line is the bottom rectangle where it says the Michigan Merit Exam score, and that is you're either advanced, proficient, partially proficient, and non-proficient based on the scores of the ACT, the writing, the Work Keys, and the third day of the Michigan Department of Education tests.
What happens is there any consequence to the student if they don't show up to the third day in terms of this?
Then the score is gone. There is no score for that particular student, and they need to take it the next year.
Dr. Baker, it's a graduation requirement.
Okay. So they're gonna take it.
The carrot.
They're gonna take it, okay, all right.
They need to take it. So right now, today, as Mr. Lewis said, we are working on our day one who didn't take the ACT. They were in taking it today. Tomorrow we'll work on those who did not take the day two, which are, I believe the number was five or six students who, out of the 181, who did not take that a portion of the test. These are the goals that we have for our own school, the 95% attendance. We want them to try to accomplish that 18 composite score for the ACT. That is the minimum that we want them to try. So if they do get that, if they raise above that bar, we want them to at least increase their score by 3, which is, again, it's a goal, it's something to look forward to. It is, our kids work well with numbers. If we know what that bar is, then we're able to attain it. If we don't give them a number, then it's like, well, what am I doing? So we want to make sure that they have a number that they can go for. That's the staff, and I tell you, awesome. Absolutely, every one of them who worked on this Michigan Merit exam, and this is not about the 3 days of taking this, administering this test. This is about all the work prior to the months of being in those classrooms, working with the data, working with the skills. I'll tell you that, the hats off to all of them. And I'm anxiously nervous for the results, but that's my group. Again, just let you know, we took practice tests both in October and January. This is how we gave opportunities to our students for extra work. Not only did we do this before school and a day or two after school, but we gave 1 day a week in February to make sure that every one of our students who were taking that test somehow received extra instruction on strategies, on content area, so that we could get them as prepared as possible. This is above and beyond what they did in the classroom. For our ELL students, it just happened to be that a majority of our students who came before school and after school were our ELL students. And love them to death because, they wanted to do well. And you could just tell that they wanted to do well. I'm not saying all of them, but many of the students who came before and after school were our ELL students who were just wonderful. This is just the schedule of the days, day 1, day 2, day 3. Again, just to give you, this is what we did every day after. It was logistical, not a nightmare. We did it, and we did it well. But what we did was, once they were finished with that, they had some options. Their parents could call in and excuse them for the day. Or they could have lunch with us and go on with their classes. Or we had a movie every afternoon for them to just relax, because we knew that it was a little stressful.
So they all chose going back to their classes, right?
I'll tell you, Dr. Baker, it was a combination. I thought for sure that they'd have parents calling in,
That's right.
but it wasn't that way. I mean, it was probably a third.
Wow.
They surprised me. They surprise you sometimes.
Never know.
So that was my big spiel to them was, it's what happens in that classroom every day, and that's how we're going to move forward. There's a great motivational speech that's attached to that, but we won't go on. When I talk to our juniors, I always like to educate them on why it's important. So we go through some data as to what jobs looked like back in, and part of that slide is missing, back in the 70s versus what jobs look like, and what a degree looks like for careers now. So there's always a little bit of education that has to go on with this. So again, just the importance of degree earning, what you can do if you set your sights on it. Just some other education. So after the January administration of our ACT test, we give the results back to the students, and we talk to them about what they saw on their results page. On this particular, and then what I do is I like to talk to them a little bit about the bigger picture. So March 13th means that those were a different cohort of students who took the ACT test last year. So that was last year's results, right? Had 152 students take the ACT last year on March 13th, 2013. Their average was 14.3, composite average in English. We administered the test on September the 23rd with this group, right? So it's this junior group, different group, different cohort. This is the group that we now need to prepare them for the ACT. So we took it in January. They took it again in, they took it in September. We took it again in January. That's where you see the January 21. So you can see the gain. We went from 12.2 to 13.5. Our goal is a 0.5 higher than what we got last year. So that's where the 14.8 comes. See that? We actually, our growth from the fall to the winter was 1.3. However, we need to jump 1.3 to get from where we were on the last administration of 13.5 to where we want to be, which is 14.8. Good? Right, so that's English. That is reading. So again, big jump. We have to make some serious gains. Hopefully, this last 2 weeks when they took the ACT, we've done a lot of work, and I have some good feelings.
Now, these kids are seeing these.
Our students have seen all of their results, individual and
Groups, so
Group.
they're aware of it.
they are aware of it. I went into every junior academic strategies class, 6 of them. It sounded, I had to make up stories because somebody, I mean, when when you're saying the same, when you only have one prep and you're saying the same thing over again, I had to make up stories. So it was good though. Every one of them received the same information.
I think that's important, that they know exactly what's going on.
Right.
That's right.
Where they have to be, otherwise it's teenagers.
Right. Got to have a goal. Got to have a bar. Got to have whatever it is.
And you have to know
Right.
where you are.
Right. I'm an athletic guy. You got to have an end zone. You got to have a, you got to have a pit to jump across. Whatever it is, you have to have something.
I don't want the pit,
I'm sorry.
I want to avoid the pit.
Our math. So again, gains. We made gains from September to January, which is great. We just want to continue that momentum and see a larger jump from the January to the March. Science, like you saw in the Ottawa data, pretty good results. This was last year, and then we were very surprised by from the small jump, and we consider that a small jump from 15 to 15.6. Mr. Rosendahl does a great job of preparing students for the science portion of either the work keys or the ACT. He doesn't really, so we were really baffled by only the 0.6 jump. And then the composite. So again, we want to get to a 16.4. That is a 0.5 jump from last year with a different cohort. So that's what it is. And so we are waiting the results. This is how we communicated to our parents. We did so many calls to our parents. Our parent newsletter, I don't know if you can click that and bring up you probably can't, so I'll have to forward you our last newsletter. We try to do it in language that is easy to read, although sometimes it's different with all the educational speak and the way ACT and Work Keys writes their information. We did have a parent meeting for just those parents of students who took the Michigan Merit Exam. It was okay attended, it wasn't great. But the bottom line is sometimes our parents, they don't know algebra, they don't know biology, they don't know, some of those skills that we need them to the kids to understand. We just ask them to be really good parents and have their kids get to sleep when they should and get a good breakfast and, all of those things. Yeah. So that is the information that we presented to all of our students and staff.
So in the future, Carl, I'll work with Carolyn Evans to just give you your own meeting, so that way we can spend more time with each of your slides. So,
We'll have a post-conference, Dr.
I do want to say for.
Free time.
I do want to say, though, that this is different because it's focused on the MME and the ACT compared to the others. But as I think that if anyone, the 4 people that might actually view this at home, might get the impression that it's teaching to the test work. But when I was on the governance board last year, I mean, it was the way you incorporate the importance of the test with learning across the board and connecting the dots with the different disciplines. It was clearly not just about improving math and reading scores for the MME. That it was, in fact, in some ways, you guys, I thought, did a good job of using the MME as a way to end up creating carrot and stick for the other learning that needed to be taking place. So I appreciate that, and I was certainly somewhat skeptical last year when we went through this, and I learned a lot from that work, so thanks.
Well, I'm last.
You are in between us and dinner.
Well, I learned something. I'm Dr. Art Garner. I have learned the true definition of 3 minutes.
And we're counting on that. We're counting on that.
That's not a green light.
Hey, it's only fair, right? My evening plans are run. So
I promise I won't pontificate too long. Who's one of those doctoral awards? I just wanted to give you an update on where we were from the last time, particularly when we presented about focus groups and what our fall and winter maps. And some of the things of what we've done since the last time we were here. We're working with the Challenge Scholars with the Grand Rapids Community Foundation. We've done some work this year with Cambridge Education Association to have association with the education community to give us a quality school review. So they've come in and worked with the IOT, myself and administration, about some of the practices that we have in the school as it relates to student learning. We have created a new, what we call the Leaders of Teaching and Learning, which is our IOT, to really look at data and teach each other about cross-content and also grade level data. When we've also, in addition to everything else that you've heard, we also have an internal learning walk where teachers get a day to walk through the building and to look at our school improvement plan after our data dialogue, and then the external one, we take that feedback and the staff, the leadership team goes and supports the work that was done with the external by doing an internal one so that we can provide our staff with feedback. So it's not just given to us, but it's also given to us by us. And then we still do our PLCs, which are grade level, which in a comprehensive middle school sometimes is difficult to do, but it's part of the practice that we have to study student work across the grade level, so that students and teachers and departments don't feel isolated, that they feel that they're part of a team, and give them an opportunity to provide feedback to one another on how to motivate students, where a student may be more successful in science or English, where a math teacher, which is our issue in our building, as math is our most difficult subject to kind of get gains in. So the teachers get support from one another through the grade level. And we also have a student success team, and I just met today with the KSSN, so they're starting here after spring break, so we have another opportunity to provide support, not just to our students, but also to our parents and the community, so that they can become a part of Westwood, and not us trying to do it by ourselves, but incorporate parents' input on what we need to do to help educate their children. We also have Aquinas volunteers, and through the Challenge Scholars, with the support of the Community Foundation, we have a literacy coach, a math coach, and a school to career coordinator that works closely with our staff, and have created a volunteer manual for our building to so we don't make assumptions that folks who want to volunteer not just come in, but also give them an opportunity to have opportunities to volunteer the right way in order for us to support student learning in the classroom, so that they're not just coming in and observing, but they have something to offer, and they go through the training with our leadership coaches and in our building, and they created that manual this year. And so I wanted to present to you where our map data from the fall, we spent November in our PD looking at the map data that we took in the fall, and started thinking about what could we do differently that is where we couldn't do it and couldn't morph it into to the schedule, where the teachers came up with an opportunity to create Focus Friday. So every Friday, based on the fall map, we looked at where kids' strands were and where were the deficits for students that we needed to really focus on, because when we looked at when we got our MEP data back, it was very alarming that we still didn't make the gains that we thought we were going to make. We didn't in mathematics, and again, our target was really African American and Hispanic males, which if we cannot get them to move faster or get them to where they need to be at grade level, particularly in a comprehensive middle school before they get to Mr. Nelson, we need to do something with that, and that was what we did in November, and that was the result of Focus Fridays that we reported to you earlier this year. So we did have some gains. It's not where we want it to be, and those are all of the students that were tested from fall to winter in each grade level where they were in the fall, and made some gains at grade level that either at the norm or they're above it. And this week, this Friday, we are going to look at those students who were close, which we call our bubble kids, and then look at those kids that there were attendance issues or behavior issues, that what we can do to help those students become a part of it. One of the things that we did in January after winter break was really, when you walk through the building, you'll see graphs of where kids should be as far as their RIT score and where they should be with their MEP scores. So every student, and I have a binder in my office with a goal for every student in the building where they get an opportunity. Every day I meet with 5 kids for about 15, 20 minutes talking about strengths and weaknesses and being able to help them understand how to improve their score so that we can move to the right, left to right instead of always being in the left. So students have been shared where they should be as far as their grade level, and also they should know their scores. And what our teachers have done in conferences, every teacher has shared map data with the parents that have come in, and those who have not come in, we've made phone calls. We're still making phone calls to get those parents who couldn't come in to give them an opportunity to get an update on where their student progress is and where they are and where they fall in map. And that's for math, and this is reading.
So look back to mathematics. So,
Yes.
So the 7th graders in the fall scored 19.08%. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
19% were at or above.
They were at or above, at or above.
And that went to
It jumped to 31%.
31.7.
Yes. I think, and one of the things that was a help was really, and it was an aha moment for us when we did it, did our data review in November, and we were starting to look at it, and not just looking at the strands, but started looking at who the students were. And one of the things that we discovered was that they didn't know what the score meant. They saw the score,
Yep.
and when we were doing goal setting with the students in the classroom, we really didn't understand, they didn't understand, well, why you have me take this test, what's the importance of the MEP, and we had to really address that to them. So I do grade level meetings with every grade, every month, and that was the first thing we did when we came back from winter break, and then putting the graph out in front of students so they can see where, if you're at a 230 in reading, what does that really mean as grade level, and giving them more of an illustration on, so they can hold their score up to the graph and go, well, I have to be here. I know I came in at 197, and we did have a couple 7th graders that went from a 215 to a 238, and we've also taken the kids to the library, helped them get a library card, and now our media center books are being taken out more frequently than they were before we did this in January. And it was right after we came back from break to share it with the students, and we did the same thing with the parents, so that it's kind of triangulated around them to help them increase that. And we're seeing that evidence. Being a 6 school, we still have extended learning time, so 15 minutes out of the day, we just stop and everyone's doing math at that time. So there are lesson plans that we put together at the beginning of the year, so we're still doing that, which we were doing the year before. So they're getting exposed to it more often. And so with the Focus Fridays, we use those strands, the lower kids, to put them with the math teachers for 50 minutes on a Friday so that they're working on their deficit area. Good question. Those are our reading scores from fall to winter. And more students are checking out books. We have done a book fair, we have done a book exchange, and we're going to do another book fair when we return from spring break. And the goal was that every student, and we've had folks donate money for students to buy a book, so every student in our building has one book at least, and had a chance to exchange that book if they read it. And then the next time when we come back, they will get a book. If they purchase a book, they get a book free. And our goal is to make sure that kids have had at least read 4 books before they left the school year. And then that we're going to encourage them this summer. We're working on a program to have kids read the Lexile before, higher the read over the summer, 10 books, so that we can celebrate them when they return in the fall. Instead of starting out with rules, we're going to start off with celebration for kids who have read 10 books. And we're right now working on a plan to help parents be a part of that conversation on what does that look like in the summer. This is the first time, which was kind of wrenched my heart to see that kids didn't live right down the street from the library, didn't know what it was, and we took them to the library this year. And now we have more kids going to the library and using the computers that the Student Advancement Foundation has provided for us. So now kids are getting assistance with their homework, and we're starting to see more kids with books in the school. And the whole mission is to catch them reading, and that's our goal. That's our meet, and then the next part is that we did start second semester, right as second semester started, we started our priority on math for all students. I'm still using our 15 minutes Monday through Thursday, but then on Friday we have math focus groups based on the strands with the lowest 30%. Those students have been there for 5 weeks. We're going to look at that on Friday. Any student that has shown some gains, our math coach has created a pre-assessment and a post-assessment based on those strands so that students can demonstrate that they have mastered that. So then if they've mastered it, they get an option to be released to go to an enrichment opportunity. Or they can go into the next deficit area of their choice if it's math or reading. We use math first, and then we look at the strands for reading groups. We have informational text, our narrative text, and word recognition. We still have students that phonics is a challenge for them in the 6th and 7th grade. And then our ESL students getting the SHIAP support still gets an opportunity to work with our Rosetta Stone during that time. And then we've also incorporated in February on Friday, the last 20 minutes of the day is silent reading, where students are logging and journaling what they've read, which has actually helped the culture in the building. So at the end of the day, it's not chaos, it's more of an orderly fashion where students are leaving on Friday and they look forward to doing it. Where now we know that students are going into the library checking out books because it is required that everyone has a book. And that includes the custodian and cooks that are there. They all must read at the same time. And then we have enrichment that teachers have created themselves. We have 2 teachers are working with health and fitness, logging, teaching students how to eat healthy and monitor what they eat. We have an advanced art with, we have a KIL that's there, and the art teacher's working with that. And then I have 20 students that work with myself for 50 minutes on leadership development, on what it means to leave a legacy. And advanced geography, and we're working on current events, and we started off our focus groups with the Olympics, which kind of helps students with their social studies and science and understanding where the Olympics was being held this year. Yeah, where they are. So that's Westwood in a nutshell, and where we are today based on what we presented to you in the fall.
Here, KSSN brought in the A-team to help them out, is that right?
From what I understand, I have 18 that's coming in, and we are,
Isn't that where you're?
everyone should be starting after spring
I'll be
break
starting, but
to move the ball.
John's gonna be over there helping you out.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Well, I hear really good things about Westwood and your leadership over there, so
Thank you, Doc.
good job, so. No, I hear good things about Carl too, but
Yeah, he
I
keeps
hear
me-
especially good things about you, Art.
He raises the bar for me. Thank you.
Good, very good, thank you, Art.
thank you.
So I'll connect with you again, Dr. Baker. I have the list constructed that we talked about.
I was gonna
Right.
say, don't tell me that you're gonna present
Oh,
something.
absolutely not. No, but I did work with Dr. Baker to construct a list. I do have it, I was in a meeting, so I'll just send it to you electronically in the morning.
Okay.
We had one other addition a request coming from the academic team, and that was to possibly provide you an update on professional development at the end of the year. And so I
Okay.
just put that on as a question.
Okay. Right. So, I think unless you guys have any other
No, that was very
questions.
good.
Yeah.
we'll
Thank
adjourn.
you
That's-
for
I know it's a lot.
No,
And
it
just
was
for,
very
so
good.
this is the last
Interesting.
time that we'll hear from these schools related to the priority schools?
I believe they get a you get a written report from
Okay.
them next time?
So let me just think for a moment. I can look at the schedule,
Okay.
actually, it'd be probably but I believe these individual schools will be written, and then the other set of schools, the 12, I believe you'll see one more time. We do not have an April report, so the only two reports are May and June.
Oh,
Very
okay,
good.
okay, good.
It's encouraging. This is encouraging.
And we wanted you all to ask the question of how do you know it's working? I think it's important coming.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's slow, as long as it's steady and it's going this way.
I think we got a good sense of how things
Yeah,
are
we
going.
want them to know that, you know, as a board, we certainly we want to support and figure out resources and other partnerships, whatever can happen, we can knock on doors and figure out other things, but we really want the principals to know that we really support them, and the families too, their own school families to know that we have their back, so to speak.
I think it's good that you present all of the information, so you know, with some of them that were really low, that you go, oh my gosh, but at least we have to know.
The
and we
context,
appreciate
yeah.
knowing where we are, so you know that every bit that you can do is great.
Yeah.
One other logistical question, is there, since all this was presented on the screen, I'm assuming that all of this is okay to be presented to the public in a packet? So if we can make sure that that gets posted?
Any articles in
Yeah.
order.
The only thing that
That
I would,
meets scores.
what I would ask is the
The map.
reports that Coit had,
Okay.
that those, and then, MEP scores, might have you started to?
Are they still embargoed?
No,
No?
they're not
Okay.
embargoed, so they could stay on there.
I would say, but one thing is though, is that this stuff is put, I mean, if anything's put on the screen, it can be seen on TV, so.
Right, and that was why, Mrs. Reed was conscious of not having that grade level show.
Oh, okay, all right, so, yeah, so anything that isn't, I'd like to have in that posted, so. Okay. All right, so, I get calls, so, people want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important for parents to be able to,
Yeah.
Parents?
Well, from media, but, you know, I mean, it's. Well, I know, but actually, I think that there are parents that would like to know, so I think that if it's on the screen, it seems like we should post it. I mean, we can discuss if we should have a different standard, but,
So, Dr. Baker, would, to make sure that conversation happens with Teresa, 'cause
but actually, I mean, we did have it. I thought that you and I and Julie, and I thought Dana was in the room, that basically that, I thought the understanding was that if it's coming to us and it's gonna be presented to us in the meeting, that it would be presented to the public.
I'll
I
just
mean,
kind
and so, and you can keep that in mind in terms of what comes to us, but if it's put on the screen, it seems like it might as well be, or if it's discussed in the meeting, it has, I mean, if it's FOIA-able, we might as well have it.
Well, it's
So-
still being,
we were concerned about articles and those things. We'll just copy those for you and not put them on the web. I think there are ways that we can work on them.
Right, okay.
don't forget your. Thank you very much. We done?
Thank you.
thank you.
Sharon person?
Yeah.